Good morning everyone and welcome back to a walk to workout with Whittaker. You'll notice this one's a bit late because I had an early start at work yesterday, so I didn't get to watch it in the morning first. I had to watch it last night, so it's now Tuesday morning here in Australia. Well, War of the Sontarans. I won't keep you in suspense. It definitely keeps up the quality that we had from last week. Very exciting episode, and also a bit longer, and I like that. I like that they didn't cut it down to fit the 50 minutes. They've decided they're going to go with a 59-minute episode this week to fit everything in. So let's start with the main story, and that is the Sontarans in the Crimean War. And that's a period of history I don't know a lot about, and so for me, those early lines explaining the conflict and what the various factions are doing there was really well done, and it felt natural and organic. And I love the idea that instead of just invading, the Sontarans have gone way back in time and sort of assumed the role of two of the major world powers. And so they've just always been there. It's a really good idea, and Sontarans have been interested in time travel for ages. You know, in the Time Warrior, Lynx is bringing people backward through time, rather. In Invasion of Time, of course, they invade Gallifrey. So it's understandable that this is their next step, and they're always being more and more audacious. In terms of where we pick up from the cliffhanger, we don't really get an explanation as to why the Doctor, Yaz and Dan get there. I'm willing to accept that the Tardis just, move them out of the way. Here's the Doctor watching this cloud coming towards them, and the Tardis is like, oh, for goodness sake, and takes them to a source of temporal disturbance. That makes a great deal of sense in the way the TARDIS thinks, always taking the Doctor where she needs to go, not necessarily where she wants to go. That brings me to That brings me to this week's main guest star, Sarah Powell as Mrs Mary Seacole. And wow, what an amazing performance. I'd heard of Mary Seacole, but I didn't know who she was. And much like setting up the Crimean War for people who aren't terribly aware of it, her character is set up really quickly. It's natural for the Doctor to explain who she is, but only a little. And then Mary shows us the rest by showing us the Great British Hotel. And I just found Sarah Powell utterly charming. And I think where it really works is the historical celebrities in Doctor Who aren't always a part of driving the story. The story is happening around them, the Doctor comes in, sort of teaches them a valuable lesson about not taking life for granted, say with Charles Dickens. But here instead, Mary becomes a surrogate companion for the episode because Dan and Yaz are taken away somewhere else. Coming up to a zebra crossing here. And that means we get to see more of the dynamic between Mary Seacole and the Doctor, which works really well. And there's just this sort of attitude between them that both of them are doing things that in this period of history it's a man's job. And Mary even says that only men are doctors. And they go out and perform the reconnaissance, try to broker a peace, but not to the exclusion of having a backup plan. And I really like that. I like it when Jodie Whittaker's Doctor gets to be a bit devious, and she is here. And I notice that in neither of the episodes this series have we had her saying how nice she is. Because if you've been following my reviews for a while, I had this theory that the reason she talks about how nice she is she knows she's really not. Especially not to the monsters. In terms of the monsters, the Sontarans are excellent in this. I know some people don't like the makeup or the costumes. I understand your concern. I do not have the same concern. I think they look amazing. They marry the quality of masks and prosthetics we've come to expect in the 21st century with the heavier features of the classic series Sontarans. And much like the classic series, the two Doctors, we have two different actors playing various Sontarans. Dan Starkey is of course back as a junior Sontaran this time, and again, this ties into the Doctor not being that nice. The Doctor knows that he is going to be killed when he goes back to his commander. She knows that, but she needs to talk to the Sontarans, so off he goes. And I really like that scene between him and Jodie. And I like that she doesn't reveal that she's the Doctor, because if she were to do that, the Sontarans would just launch an assault. By not doing that, she brings the Sontarans to her. It's really clever. And then you have the Sontaran commander in the 21st century being played by the same actor as the Sontaran commander in the 1850s. And his first name is Jonathan, I forget his surname now, but he's excellent. I really, really like him. And especially, that he came to the Crimea to fight in the war because he wanted to ride a horse. I think that is so brilliant. And of course, the Sontarans, people think they have to be serious. There were lots of complaints about Strax over the years because he's too funny. And it's like, no, the Sontarans have always had this comedic bent, especially not knowing they're funny. But this story marries the two really well. Such as when Dan Starkey's junior Sontaran comes in to give his report, it's kind of funny how he's going on about how he ashamed Sontar, etc., etc. Yeah, and then he gets shot in the chest and killed. Yeah, it's that kind of turn that defines the Sontarans in the 1970s. Less so in the 80s, but the two Doctors, they still get some funny lines. On the road. And also in the Sontaran conflict, we have the human General Logan. Look, yeah, he's the typical military figure in one of these stories, in that he doesn't listen to the Doctor, thinks everything can be solved with violence, he's shocked when it can't be, and then he blows them all up at the end, despite the fact they're leaving. And even though that is a typical character beat, I like how the Doctor reacts, because her line that his actions are not about redemption, his actions are about assuaging his guilt. But then the TARDIS appears, and she's off. Yeah, she doesn't have time for this conversation anymore. And while I think I would have liked her to go in a bit harder on him, he's now left with the knowledge that his actions were about himself, not about his men. Yeah, I think it's an imperfect scene, but I can totally understand why the Doctor just goes, okay, no, done with this situation, out of here. Now, while all that is going on, Yaz and Dan have their own plots. So Dan ends up in the 21st century where the Sontarans have invaded. We meet his parents, who, yeah, their appearance is fleeting, but they're really, really entertaining. I especially like the discussion of how it was discovered. You could incapacitate a Sontaran like a drunk guy in Baconhead, I think they said. Just discovered you could hit them on the back of the neck. And when it's like, why would he try that? And they're just like, well, he was drunk and, Baconhead. I really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, we get Dan sneaking aboard the Sontaran ship. I love how they can then communicate across time, because of course this is a tempora offensive. Dan's still getting used to the lingo. And I love the Doctor's sort of patience with him, suggesting maybe temporal offensive. Yaz, meanwhile, has been spirited away to the Temple of Atropos on the planet of Time. And that is a really interesting idea. It reminds me of the 80s Doctor Who comics, where the Time Lords live on the planet Jewel, and Merlin is part of the High Council. Actual Merlin, not the Seventh Doctor Merlin, oddly enough, because it was before that. It's sort of unapologetically a bit silly. Lots of people coming down here, so I'll disappear down this alley. Now Yaz, of course, gets to explore there. I'm a little disappointed that Yaz, she's a little bit underused, because, you know, all of her stuff takes place in sort of a room and a corridor, but she is still really intelligent and figures out, well, if you want me to be here for repair, I'm here for repair, even if I don't know what I'm doing, to find out more information. And that little note on her hand, the "what would the doctor do?" I picked up that straight away, what the initials meant. And what I think is so wonderful and a bit sad about that is, you know, we discovered in Can You Hear Me that, you know, Yaz has a past where she was unhappy, where she was bullied, and wasn't sure what direction to go in. And it's like she still needs to remind herself of what to do, if you see what I mean. It's a mantra. And it's a little bit sad and a little bit hopeful, because I think a lot of us need that kind of thing of reminding ourselves with a simple phrase, what is it we want to do, who is it we want to be? And I thought it was really touching. And then Swarm uses that against her at the end, and I think that's really powerful as well. Vinder, look, he continues to be interesting, but he's kind of just here this week to give Yaz someone to talk to, and I hope we find out a bit more about him next week. But with so much else going on, I don't mind that we haven't found out too much about him yet. This whole thing is building up layers. And like last week, the individual plot was about saving Dan. This week, the individual plot is about preventing the war with the Sontarans. Or rather, stopping the war with the Sontarans, because it's already happening. And the way the Doctor deals with them is really clever. It builds on what we know about the Sontarans in the past, and gives us new information. The briefing scene in the hotel is a little bit of an info dump that we've come to expect from Chris Chibnall. I was just checking I hadn't lost my microphone. But I don't mind. It's well performed. Jodie and Sarah are really great in that, and if it's Sarah Powell, I do apologise. But overall, I found this to be a super enjoyable episode, and it has moved the overarching plot ahead a bit with Yaz's scenes, and judging from the next time trailer, we're going to get a lot more information about that next week, and at least now I understand the title of Once Upon Time, which I just thought, they've missed a letter out, Once Upon a Time, but no, it's a play on words, and I can respect and appreciate that now. Yeah, but overall this is an 8 out of 10. It could be a 9 depending on how the overarching plot goes, so it's hard to rank that, but that is currently equal to last week's episode. If you pressed me on which one I preferred, I would say this one, because I just feel the individual plot of the war holds together and keeps my attention a bit more than last week's one. But of course last week's one had to bounce around a lot and introduce plots for later episodes. But I'll be very interested to hear what you think down in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching. I am going to go put myself under heavy weights and squat so I can become a Sontaran. But until next week, I hope you all have a wonderful time, keep yourselves safe, and I will see you in the next video.